Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about the biggest pitfall in Kriya Yoga. So there are different pitfalls in Kriya Yoga. There are many, as in any meditation path. In particular in Kriya Yoga, one of the pitfalls is incorrect pranayama. So Kriya pranayama is a form of intentional breathing that is practiced in Kriya Yoga. It's the main technique that allows one to go into a low idle state. And so doing one's pranayama correctly is really essential for starting to get internalized, to get into an internalized state, what is called pratyahara in yoga. Another pitfall can be about modifications to Kriya. So there are different Kriya Yoga lineages that have modified the original Kriya as taught by Lahiri Baba, the originator of Kriya Yoga. And these different schools have modified, stripped out bits of the Kriya technique and made it less effective than the original. So if you're not doing the original Kriya, you're more likely to have a deficit technique that doesn't allow you to get internalized as quickly as the original Kriya Yoga. Another pitfall is around having too much concentration in one's meditation. And so too much concentration in meditation can actually lead to substandard results because you can't let go and move into the deeper aspects of meditation, into dhyan, which is absorption, and samadhi, the super conscious awareness, because one's mind is too concentrated. So an example of this is an incorrect application of Shambhavi mudra, where people will actually concentrate at the point between the eyebrows. This is taught in some Kriya Yoga schools, and incline their eyes in that direction, focusing there and concentrating there. And so this will definitely hold one back from going into deeper states of absorption and samadhi. So you definitely don't want to do that. But the biggest pitfall in meditation really is around the sense of self. And this is what is sometimes called ahamkara. And ahamkara is used as a Sanskrit term for ego consciousness. And what ahamkara literally means is I-making, meaning the sense of self, making a sense of self from some phenomenal experience, right? Identifying with a particular phenomenon and then saying, this is me, this is mine, this is myself. And so while in many yogic paths they talk about the sort of false sense of the ego consciousness and the true sense of the soul consciousness, the Atman, versus the ahamkara, the ego consciousness, in one's day-to-day meditation, they basically disregard this entirely. And so the idea of I-making in one's meditation, and even in Kriya Yoga circles, is very prevalent. It's something that people don't even realize that they're doing because they're projecting a sense of self towards some phenomenal experience, right? Which is the very essence of I-making. Identification and saying this is me is a projection of the ego consciousness. This is a major stumbling block, and there's two aspects of this that are prone to challenges. And so the first aspect of this is something called Sakaya Ditti. It is a view of the self, an identity view. It is the idea that there's an independent acausal self that is separate from the mechanisms of causation. And so in practice, it's very common among Kriya yogis to identify with a blissful state of awareness in meditation as one's true self. It is really the projection of I-making into that experience, not recognizing the fact that that bliss state is impermanent. It arises and it passes away. And so the tendency to identify with states in meditation as a true self really comes from that particular practitioner not going deep enough in meditation. So if one has only gone that far along the road of meditation, one has not seen the end of the road. One does not really understand what the path is. The thing is, when you reach the end of what's capable in meditation, and you experience that cessation of feeling, perception, and consciousness, which is a result of contacting the unconditional absolute, you have this realization that destroys identity view, that destroys Sakaya Ditti. And what it is a realization that there are no phenomena that are self in meditation. The meditation process itself and all those phenomenal experiences that one have are really impersonal. There isn't truly a self in them other than what is created and made with this I-making process, with this identification process. One is no longer capable of projecting one's sense of self into phenomenal experiences because the vision, the illusion of that separate acausal self has been shattered. So what one wants to do is to go as far in meditation as possible to reach the unconditioned absolute. and to be able to see the true nature of phenomena and to have the realization on how things really are. It is a recognition that there are three characteristics to all phenomenal experiences. One is that they are impermanent. They arise and pass away. Two is that they are impersonal. They cannot be taken as a sense of self. And three, because they're subject to change, they lead to suffering if one clings to them, if one identifies with them. One experiences unhappiness. So when one recognizes those three characteristics, which are called tilakkhana in all phenomenal experiences, one can see things as they truly are and let go of the clinging and attachment to internal phenomena. And then notice how one identifies with those internal phenomena. And really, that subtle identification is mana, which is conceit. It's something that happens at a very subtle level in one's perception, in one's awareness. Because one is attuned, has developed a clearer mindfulness, the ability to recognize how the mind moves from one thing to the other, one is able to see how one identifies with the internal phenomena. And when one recognizes this, one can let it go. And this is really what I talk about as pulling out the linchpin of conceit. It's really about removing a filter in one's perception to see things as they are without the concept of the I-making in them. One needs to cultivate this by degrees, but as one starts to do that, one is able to more effortlessly move through meditation because there are all these encumbrances in the I-making that are stopping one from going into deep meditation. Now, that's the major complaint that most people have in meditation is they get stuck. They're not able to progress. They're trying to do something. And the trying to do is really about that sense of self trying to do something, the I-making trying to do something. I need to go into deeper meditation. I want to do this. I. When you start to recognize how you put the I in everything, you can start to look at it objectively and say, oh, that's not true at all. It is an impersonal, impermanent process. Let the I go. And when the I goes, suddenly the internal phenomenal experiences are as they truly are. One can see them as they truly are, and one goes deep. So the sense of conceit is something that is very subtle, and it really happens at the end of the road in one's awakening. The final removal of the last fetter of conceit happens at that level. But if one doesn't do the requisite work, which is to shatter the image of the separate self initially by reaching the unconditional absolute and recognizing the impersonal process, and one discards that false idea of a separate self, then one is more able to be objective in meditation and see things as they really are. And this really is at the essence of what the spiritual path is about, is to recognize the false identification and attachment with things that are not the self. Things that are good and things that are bad. So certainly it's better to be in a wholesome state of mind than in an unwholesome state of mind. So if one is experiencing emotions like anger and so on, to let those go and replace it with loving kindness and forgiveness is better. But if one identifies with that loving kindness and forgiveness as a sense of self and starts to build up that concept of the self into this larger than life personality, really one is identified with that concept of the I, then one is still creating binding karma. There's going to be actions later. One is conditioning one's mind and identifying with that particular state of consciousness and conditioning oneself to repeat the same kind of choices over and over again in the future. Both of these are karmically binding, the unwholesome and the wholesome. But one wants to move from the unwholesome, then discard attachment to the wholesome. So although some Kriya yogis may be chasing after bliss, seeing bliss as a salve for all life's ills, and saying, as long as I can get into bliss consciousness, everything is okay. This is a very short-sighted strategy to happiness. It will not lead to perpetual, lasting happiness. And so really, it's a temporary high. But if one is able to go beyond the bliss to see things as they truly are and to let go of the false sense of self, one will start to realize the true nature of what existence is and work towards one's awakening. One will not be deluding oneself and identifying with bliss states as saying, this is me, I'm the great blissful Kriya yogi. One will actually not even care because the sense of self starts to erode and disappear and things are as they truly are, and one moves toward the unconditioned absolute where one can take refuge. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.